What is the difference between a mentally blind man and somebody who sees? It is understanding the world. Deeper, it is understanding yourself. Unfortunately, there is no magical pill to do so. What does help is introspection. Introspection is a powerful tool, and to improve your ability to introspect, in this video, I want to explore 4 biases that will help you understand and see better. Nothing in this world is completely objective. Even if it looks obvious, there are different ways people will look at it. Everything, even the things that we are most comfortable and confident in, go through our subjective lens and then are being interpreted. This process doesn't sound objective because we don't have an objective lens that will gather the information, and we don't have an objective brain that will interpret the accumulated data. And sure, some things are clearer than others and easier to come to consensus with. For example, say there are 10 people that look at a house. What do they see? What do they focus on? How do they interpret this thing called house? Presumably, as long as they all speak the same language, they will understand the word. They will understand the meaning of the object before them. They will have a lot of shared understanding, seemingly see the same thing, and yet if you look deeper, you will see it is not as it seems. You might wonder what I'm talking about, because a house is a house and everybody knows it is a house. Let's see how the 10 people would potentially talk about the object house. The first person will look at the house and say it has a pretty yellowish color. The second person looks at the house and says that the roof is weirdly crooked. The third person notices the door and describes how this is an old antique door he rarely sees. The fourth person talks about the fairly small window and how they don't fit the rest of the house, and so on. Even if we share the world together and understand many things similarly, we all live in our own reality, and that is worth understanding. That is worth getting your attention. Additionally to how our perception and brain functions, there's another element to consider regarding the lens and the interpretation of data. I am talking about human nature. Human nature that is operating and manipulating and distorting certain elements, certain realities. How we see it, how we react, what we believe in, which is also important to consider when you work with certain things, especially information that is coming your way. A good way to look at the potential flaws and dangers of our human nature is to categorize them in the form of biases that we can then explore. This will make it easier to name and catch ourselves when this happens to us. There are plenty of biases that if we become aware, then we cannot necessarily always solve them, but at least soften their reaction. Knowing and then catching them could help us correct our path, which should eventually be of benefit to us. Now I want to talk about 4 biases that I have chosen because they are especially related and damaging in the world of social media and the commentary world, in how, if we become aware of them, we will have an easier time going through content and find better quality while being less manipulatable. The first bias is called confirmation bias. It is arguably the most important bias, or at least top 2, that we struggle with when we work on received information. What is confirmation bias? It is the idea to favor and believe information that confirms the beliefs and theories and hypotheses that we already have. So we believe in something, and when we find information, be it from the past or right now, we tend to believe and favor the information that confirms our beliefs while neglecting the information that maybe cast doubt on our beliefs. We prefer information that is positive for our current existing beliefs, for our current outlook of life. Similarly, with people, if they agree with us, if they confirm our beliefs, then we are much more favorable to them. Now this is crucial because we have beliefs, and when we are surrounded by many different short form, long form content that is pushing, bringing us information and giving us their opinions, we favor the people and the content whose opinions match our own. We like the ones that confirm our beliefs. Is it good that we look for people that agree with us instead of the truth? Sometimes maybe it can be emotionally rewarding, but this is generally incredibly dangerous because there is no manipulation or bias that is more impactful in how we are operating or who we are listening to, who we are believing and who not, than confirmation bias, because even if you're aware of it, you still believe in your beliefs, and so you believe in the confirmation of those beliefs. Even if you want people to understand there is a confirmation bias, make sure that they keep it in mind when they listen to commentary, and then they say, okay, it makes sense, that's true. Later, when they're still asked who they believe, who makes more sense, somehow they still lean a lot to the side that confirmed their beliefs. Despite the warnings, it didn't help. Certainly, it didn't help a lot. A big part of why that is, it is very difficult to look at our beliefs and be completely objective, or even attempting to try to be objective. So when people confirm your beliefs, agree with you, even present information that makes your beliefs seem plausible, you will eat it up. What makes this so particularly difficult is that none of what I just talked about can be put into any form of neutral lesson or rule you can always follow, and that is for a simple reason. Sometimes, maybe often, your beliefs are correct. It's not like your beliefs are always wrong, and by listening to people that confirm your beliefs, you make this huge mistake. No, sometimes you're right, maybe oftentimes you're right. This makes it so tricky, because what are you going to do? Always go against your own beliefs? That doesn't make sense and would be extreme to the other side. This deserves a much deeper look to find some solution, but I would say what can help is the following. If you are, in good faith, willing to listen to the other side of the argument and test your belief, and then you come to the conclusion you were right, then this is as good as it gets. You can still be wrong, but you have at least tested it, you were willing to listen to the other side, and this will help you to not have completely fallen for the confirmation bias. The second bias is called availability heuristic. This is an interesting bias and also very high in importance to the topic we are looking at. What does it mean? Simply speaking, you overestimate the likelihood of events that are more easily imagined and also happened recently. For example, if a terror attack happened a few days back, the feeling of people about the likelihood of another attack is much higher than if nothing happened for a few months. And there are plenty of examples for the way that availability heuristic operates and manipulates us. For instance, if a plane crashed a few days ago and you might be flying in the next few days, you will be more worried than without a plane crash. So much so that you might even cancel your flight. This is the availability heuristic in full effect, where feelings, most likely irrational feelings, become actions. How does this play out in politics, political commentary, and general commentary? Commentary will focus on certain issues and push them to the front, which will make the audience focus on those. Sometimes deservedly so, sometimes not. The issue is not even whether it is right or not. In this video, I only want to explore what it is. Just to keep in mind that not all of these actions that you might call manipulative are done with evil intent. You might rightfully worry about something and start talking about it. Even if it doesn't necessarily have the highest percentage of this coming true, it doesn't matter. It might still be something to worry about, and then you talk about it. With that said, crime is a good example how the narratives are being pushed out one way or another to create a picture in people's minds. For example, more coverage of high-profile crimes closer to an election, which will then make people think about it more. This can highlight the issue, or it can skew reality to create a picture that's worse than it really is. In political commentary, and this is something you see a lot, it might be the biggest way the availability heuristic is used. When something happens, people make it seem more generalized than it is. They use this as an example of this is happening a lot. This creates a lot of echo chambers because based on the incident you look at and the facts you focus on, you will create different realities for people, especially for the people that are inside of your bubble and only listen to you and a few others. The third bias is the Dunning-Kruger Effect. This is something you have probably been hearing about increasingly more often. What does it mean? It basically says that people with a lower level of, let's say, thinking ability or skills at a certain task overestimate what they can do, and people with high abilities and high quality of thinking underestimate their own ability. This is quite fascinating because this showcases why so many people slowly trickle towards the top when they're clearly not the most well thought out thinkers, not the most nuanced, not the most good faith. It is just the people that are incredibly confident, speaking confidently, lying and misdirecting and gaslighting the most confidently, and probably don't even know they are missing out on a lot of the nuance of the situation. And if they do, they don't really care. Just these people are trickling down to the top specifically because for these reasons. They move up and up and up because people overestimate their ability of understanding the full picture because they speak so confidently. And to speak so confidently, to not understand the level of nuance involved, it naturally implies that you have a lower level of ability to think, or you are nefarious. Either way, you see these type of people trickle down to the top oftentimes. They look at surface level information, bring them together, and interpret them to their convenience, while even sometimes creating conspiracy theories that neatly fit all of what they're saying in simple ways. Think back to the confirmation bias. Some people bend reality until it confirms their beliefs and say what they want to say. They create interpretations that don't make much sense, and if you actually scrutinize the logical connections of it, you could quickly see the many flaws of their arguments, of the logic. And yet, because they're confident and they overestimate their abilities, they just push it out, and a lot of people connect with it. Because they want simple, they want emotional, they want confident. And at the end of the day, how many people truly do care for the truth? Probably not as many as we all think. We can see how the Dunning-Kruger Effect comes into play and really just helps the wrong kind of people go to the masses and connect with them. The point is not that everybody fits in this categorization. The point is more that in a better, more logical, clearer thinking world, these people would just have zero chance at all. And yet human nature and all the biases and all these elements that I just talked about all help push them up, even though they probably don't deserve it. The fourth and last bias we will look at is called the framing effect. What does framing mean? It means that information can be positioned and presented in different ways. This often depends on what the framer wishes the audience to think. It is not possible to get every outcome, but there's a range on how you can present information. Let's look at one simple and one big event that you can frame in different ways. Opening a door for somebody. This can be looked at as a condescending action, or it can be looked at as a nice action. If you can't look at the mind of the person who opened the door and somebody asks you to describe this event, you can now frame it in the two ways. You can say the person oozed arrogance in the way he looked at people, then he went to the door, smiled at the older woman, and opened the door for her, looking around for people to praise his actions. Or the person walked to the door but noticed the older woman. He smiled kindly, taking a step to the side, opening the door for her. Nice people do exist. You can frame it in both ways. And what is important here is that even if you are a good faith representative of the situation, you can still do so. Now imagine what somebody who is bad faith could do. Another example are the strikes by President Trump and America on the Iranian nuclear sites. You can frame it, and depending on what side you are on and how nefarious you are, in two different ways. You can frame it as a creation of war. The US is entering a war, while they always promised to be anti-war and to never enter war. They broke all their promises. Trump broke all his promises. It was bad and unwarranted. Or you can say the US and these attacks created long-term peace. They stopped a dangerous regime from getting nuclear weapons, which would be 1,000 times more catastrophic than the alternative that would potentially lead to more and bigger wars in the future. So this was actually an effort in creating peace. This showcases how powerful the concept of framing is, because how can you possibly have one action be seen in two completely different ways, in such complete and opposite ways? Because this is such a powerful tool, most people in the online commentary world are focused on this above all else. They try to frame what happens to their own benefit, while other people frame the same thing to their benefit. Most debates and conversations are at least partially, or for the most part, wars on the right framing, who can frame the situation in such a way that it is not only looking good for their side, but also looks plausible to be true, is oftentimes the winner in these debates. But keep in mind, there are only limits to how much you can frame without risking to lose the plausibility and the belief of the audience. Additionally, to the issue of a certain situation being framed in bad or even malicious ways to be right, it is often the case that instead of outright lying, many people, including propagandists, focus on misinterpretation or bad faith interpretations. This means they are not technically lying, but it feels similar. Understanding how people frame a situation and how important it is should help you find a less manipulated truth. It can already help to look at the other side and how they frame it to find a middle ground. Not fully in the middle, because sometimes one side is much clearer, more on the side of the truth than the other, but also not fully on one extreme.